Hi, this is Dr. Kimberley Linert, and you're listening to Incredible Life Creator Podcast. My guest today is Jerry Fu. Jerry Fu is a conflict resolution coach and helps Asian American leaders advance in their career and life journeys. Having taken on several pharmacy leadership roles, Jerry started coaching in 2017 to help other Asian American professionals deal with the conflict they encounter at work, with their culture, and within themselves. Welcome to the podcast, Jerry.
Hi, Dr. Kim. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so I'm really excited to talk about your topic because I think we all need to be unified right now and not be, doing whatever we do to separate from each other because we look different or sound different or whatever, think different. So very excited to get into this interview. Why don't you start out by telling us a little bit about you, how you started out and how you got to be doing what you're doing now?
Yeah, absolutely. So went into college thinking I would be pre-med. And then I got a C in organic chemistry, and that kind of woke me up and realized, you know what, maybe I'm not, I don't know. I could still pursue it, but I was in this mode of, I don't want the chance of being rejected. And I don't want that shame on me or my family. So let me pivot to something else that still looks respectable. I still liked healthcare. So I said, well, pharmacy seems pretty good. So let me just convince pharmacy school that I'll be a good pharmacist, and then we'll pursue that path. So the challenge, though, with pharmacy at the time, salaries were going up around the time I graduated. So we were excited for, I thought I really lucked out when I decided to go into pharmacy school. Had some arguments with my mother because she just wanted me to work for a chain pharmacy and have stability that my dad struggled to have in trying to find gainful employment as an immigrant, despite having 2 master's degrees, one in chemical engineering, one in computer science. And so she goes, suffering is bad. I don't want you worrying about money and things like that. So just work for this company. And by then I was just like, fine, Mom, okay, I'll just do what you say. And did that, hated it after 6 months, but was too scared to leave, especially when I ended up at a situation where I had some flexible scheduling. But once that went away, and then I had a really bad customer service incident, and I said, okay, no, I need to pursue something else. And so after about 5 years with this company, I wanted to get into teaching, didn't have a residency or PhD, but a friend who worked for a pharmacy consulting company in Houston said, hey, I got promoted. My previous teaching position is open. Would you like to apply for it? I said, absolutely. I convinced them that it was worth taking a chance on. I'm walking away from a full-time job where I just earned a 3rd week of vacation, right, to take on this part-time position and possibly earn my way up. And I loved this company. Everything I heard about it was great. Hopefully it was the last company I ever had to work for. 11 months later, I got fired. And I had to deal with this like uncomfortable truth that I like the idea of being an instructor more than actually being an instructor. And so that's when the roller coaster got really bad. I ended up at a pharmacy house of cards job where 4 of my paychecks bounced while I filled for crooked doctors. And, I didn't know how to confront my boss because I was just too scared that if I confronted him, that he would just, fire me, at will, and then like leave me on the hook for, 4 paychecks I could never get back. And then thankfully, after 9 months of that, my friends got me out of that job. I got on with another one, another company that was more legitimate, but they said, hey, money's tight. We can't pay more than 8 hours a week. So I ended up moving out to Austin to work for them there to get more hours with no idea what my life is going to look like. That summer, I was asked to help teach some leadership seminars through a national meeting for a pharmacy nonprofit some of my friends run. And teaching leadership and seeing it modeled for me gave me the confidence to take on a full-time manager position that opened up in Houston a couple months later. I had a great team in Austin. It was really great, but it wasn't home. And I knew I couldn't stay scared of leadership challenges. So I said, okay, yeah, I want to come home. I want to take this on. And so still had a lot to learn. The next year I got written up by management because I was not confronting my technicians well when they were not pulling their weight. And so again, just more lessons that you have to learn along the way. And in the middle of trying to get out of the doghouse, I found out that the company's funding was pulled. And so I said, well, I was still looking to leave. It's just a little more urgent now. And the miraculous thing is that the only reason I even got an interview after that was that I had leadership experience on my resume now. And so managed to get that job, but that only lasted 11 months just because margins were terrible and among other things. And so ended up at another independent pharmacy, miraculously just landing on my feet just in time, right, to maintain employment. Helped out getting hepatitis C authorizations for, these patients, the special population. And, by now I had realized, okay, when a company is paying you to get a job done, just get the job done. Like, they're not paying you to make excuses or stories, right? But even though I was at a point where I was happy with my, job, I was happy with my work life. Unfortunately, insurances took it down because they just, they find excuses to take money away and you're left with nothing. And so I still work as a pharmacist now. I'm grateful for my current job, but 4 years ago, when my previous company went under, I had to ask myself, what am I really about? I'm tired of these insurance companies causing drama, but I love teaching these leadership workshops. So what would a career in teaching leadership look like? And started to ask around with people in the space, how they built their business, things like that, but still scared to fail. And so it took a pandemic for me to finally open my own company and, get the website up and all that stuff. So my current routine involves my day job as a pharmacist, my side job building my coaching practice, meeting a girl in the middle of the pandemic, and then salsa dancing with whatever free time I have left. So that is where I am now.
Wonderful. So you're one of those people that, took what was happening and, even started that transition. And, that takes so much courage to do that. So, and also just that journey of, finding what it is that you wanted to do. Because even though you stayed in pharmacy for quite a while, you were kind of still searching. It sounds like you were still searching for that fit for you.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, pharmacy, don't get me wrong, for the jobs that gave me a good quality of life, I hope, I hope they last forever, even as I knew there was something restless in me that maybe there's more to this life than just having a stable 9-to-5 job or something like that, where, I can have my weekends and nights to myself. Maybe there's more to that, this 40 hours a week, that's still a big albatross on my life, and that, if I'm going to spend 40 hours a week doing something every week, I should be doing something that really gets me feeling alive and excited to wake up each morning instead of, oh, okay, another day for another check, right? So yeah, it's a continually iterative process for sure.
Exactly. And, you talked about, when you're getting your first job, your mom didn't want any suffering, and you did it because mom kept on you, like, you need to do this. So what about the Asian culture, that compliant part keeps you from getting ahead in business or in your job?
Yeah, great question. I mean, you think that if you play by the rules that you win, when actually, like, building a business is about a willingness to disrupt the market, something new to bring that challenges the status quo of what is considered successful and what's acceptable, right? Like, COVID was a huge disruptor, right? People thought, okay, we know exactly what it takes to build a business here, but now, like, a lot of restaurants closed, right? A lot of stores closed because they didn't pivot in time to account for this setback. And so, yeah, to your point, right? When Asians think that as long as they work hard enough and keep their head down and stay quiet, that somehow, hopefully, someone will notice them. That's not good marketing. And we know that every business needs good marketing. And yeah, so the irony is to see, Asian companies actually succeed, right? And because it's like, well, if there's this deferential culture that just wants to be respectful and not antagonize anyone or maybe challenge things, how do they succeed? So it is an interesting question to ask for sure.
Exactly. And I'm thinking that, anyone who doesn't speak up, regardless of they're Asian or not, people tend to take advantage of them or just kind of ignore them.
Yeah, it is. And, one thing I've noticed is that people will push you to see how much you push back. And it's only if you push back where they realize, oh, okay, like, yeah, I can't mess with this guy, right? But if you just kind of like cave every single time than to say, oh, well, this guy's a pushover. There are resources here I want from him, and I know he's not going to fight me on it. So here we go. Yeah.
So when you're working with people in this conflict type of situation, do you teach them to push back and start a fight, or do you teach them to just speak up, or what kind of tools are you giving them so they know how to have a peaceful interaction, yet what it is that they want?
Yeah, great question. I'll give an example, I guess, of how I navigated a potentially, hurtful situation or offensive situation, and then maybe we can pull some insights from that. So, at one point, I was at a multicultural international networking event here in Houston, and I met an older white gentleman, and nice guy. I was happy to talk to him. He seemed pleasant, and then this is at the height of the Asian hate crimes that were going on, right around, Georgia, actually, where I believe you are. And, he asked me, he goes, hey, so all these things about Asian hate crimes, like, is it really as bad as they say? Like, have you experienced anything like this? And I said to myself, well, I can take this, his statement one of two ways. One, he's genuinely curious and concerned about my well-being, right? He's just like, man, this is, it's obviously a problem here. How are you doing in the middle of this, right? Which would be perfectly well received. The other is to imply that the media is just overblowing, or overplaying up a situation that apparently is not that big a deal, because there is some truth to that. Media is just look for whatever gives them the most ratings, but people are dying, right? So I told him, I said, well, hey, look, thankfully I have not experienced any racial hateful statements or physical violence. No one's assaulted me because, hey, you're a part of the problem, go back to China, anything like that. But I told him, I said, well, did you know that Houston's Chinatown is built on discrimination? And he goes, well, what do you mean by that? And I said, well, at some point, the city decided that they didn't want Asians like all over the city, so they sequestered them to the southwest part of the city. And even worse, to add insult to injury, they divided up the region in such a way where they couldn't concentrate all their votes. Like they couldn't have a single vote as a district. So not only did they put them in a part of the city that was undesirable, they also made sure they had no political leverage. So just because there is not more like hate crime or physical violence doesn't mean that it's okay to have an oppressive system just because it doesn't cause physical violence. Oh, right. And I'm not here to be like, yeah, I stuck it to him, right? This is more about just finding that balance of finesse, right? Like you want to put up your sign and say, hey, there are some things here that are non-negotiable, and I'm not going to condone bad behavior, right? I'm going to bring things up in such a way where I'm just going to say something like, I see this, it's not okay. And at the same time, I'm going to do something constructive about it. Like to do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good, right? Because if you fight evil with evil, the evil doesn't go away. But to give people the courage to say, hey, you know what? I'm going to be able to bring this up and I don't have to be scared because I know I'm going to do everything I can to be diplomatic, even as I am being vocal.
So, as non-Asians, how do we help change these things?
Oh man, great question. Thank you. I wish more people asked that, really. I mean, the first is, I guess, just, immerse yourself and appreciate the culture, right? Just as that way, because I think a lot of fears happen because there's no firsthand experience of what the culture is, right? And I'm not saying that Asians are perfect. We have our own prejudices as well. But, figure out, what you like about the culture, right? Like, do you like the food? That's usually the strongest case I can make. At least try the food, right? Learn some things about the religions that are out there, the stories, the values that make Asian culture, so fascinating to like so many people, right? Because yeah, even as there are definite scars from an honor shame culture, there's also a lot of values like loyalty, right, and family, that are beautiful to study and learn from and incorporate in your own life, even if you haven't seen Asian culture. And so to be an advocate, I think just to say, hey, look, don't just because I don't want to sound entitled by saying, hey, you should take care of us because we're the minority, we've been overlooked. Like that's not a good attitude to take. I'm not going to make any friends with that. But to invite people alongside us, right? To say, hey, come check us out, like to have a dinner tour in Chinatown, have some dessert, have a time where people can tell stories about what shaped them in Asian culture, and hey, here are the benefits, here are the challenges, so you guys can have a complete experience, and for yourself to say, hey, what, let me, even if it's hard, let me develop some empathy by really appreciating what they have to say and what they bring to the table. I think that would be a really great start.
Mhm. And if you could teach Asian people who are working in this country
Mhm,
three basics,
mhm,
that could help them
mhm.
be successful at work and in their relationships with non-Asian people, what would those be?
Yeah, great question. Three basics. One, yeah, don't be afraid of conflict. Like just because someone is upset with you doesn't mean that you're wrong. I think that was one thing I wish someone had told me. Just because someone's upset with me doesn't mean I'm wrong. So yeah, that'll be the first basic. I would say, hey, number two, if someone is upset with you, instead of deferring, get curious, right? Lean into the conflict instead of leaning away. Because when you get curious, you actually get to the root issue, right? That's the only way you find out. And you start to study a little closer, right? Much like leadership or conflict resolution as a skill, right? Because if you lean away, you'll never improve. But if you lean in, now you can start to study, you struggle a little bit, you polish your approach, and now things are better. So the first, yeah, don't assume that you're wrong just because someone's mad at you. Number two, lean into conflict. Because that kind of sets it up when you realize, hey, maybe I'm not wrong in this case. Okay, let me take a little closer look. And then three, just have compassion for the other person, right? To say, hey, it is in our best interest to get along. Let me figure out let me get their input on how to do that. And then let me also offer my suggestions and be confident in what I can offer as the third. To say, hey, you know what? Feel good about yourself, right? You came over here, you have skills, you have, good qualities. You have a set of friends, so clearly you're not a complete like psychopath or like some kind of ostracized person, right? Or outcast. Yeah. So yeah, have confidence in who you are. Yeah, be confident that maybe it's not your fault. And number two and three, yeah, just lean in instead of leaning away.
Mhm. Yeah, and I mean that makes sense to me because most people are uncomfortable with something that is
Mhm.
different
Yeah.
until they get used to it.
Hmm.
And also when you find yourself in a situation where you're the one or two people there who
Hmm.
are different
Hmm.
than the other people, you're going to stand out.
Hmm.
My first husband was actually from Japan. He worked for the Japanese consulate, and I met him in Chicago.
Oh.
And when I went to Japan, I was the only blonde-haired, blue-eyed person I saw. There was
Yeah.
nobody there. And
Hmm.
when you're different, people are going to look at you. So
Hmm.
they're making judgments, and they're
Hmm.
not necessarily negative. They're just like wondering, and sometimes they don't know how to approach you because you're like, they look different. Well, should I act different towards that person? Because they're just trying to figure it out. And sometimes that comes off as um negative because maybe they're feeling angry because they're feeling insecure or not sure what to do. And so some people show that as anger, some people show that as criticism.
Yeah.
In any culture, we
Hmm.
tell jokes about somebody else's culture just to make fun, not to be mean, but because there's differences, and so we're laughing at the differences because we need something to understand each other.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's interesting how it comes out, right? I remember in Brene Brown's Daring Greatly, she talks about the idea of security, right? And for a lot of Asians, right, they have this Hollywood image of, oh, blonde and beautiful, and so for better or worse, right, this is an idea that's planted in all our heads, and and some people are kind like you, and you say, oh, no, 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 right, don't build me up, like, we're human, let's interact as humans. But then others really leverage that attention, and they say, oh, you're going to give me free stuff because you think I'm out of this world, sure, why not, right? And then yeah, so to see that, and then yeah, we undercut things, right? If we are secure in ourselves, we don't undercut things. So it's like when you have to undercut people, right, and you're just like, well, they can't realize how attractive they are, so we're just going to make fun of them, right? And that's the one, instead of building everybody up and elevating everybody, they're like, no, I'm going to lift myself up, not by elevating others, but by cutting others down. It's the net effect might look the same, but it's actually really terrible. One's great and one's terrible, really.
Exactly. So yeah, if we can just be curious, like you said, just be curious and get to know a person as a person. And if I can just talk in general, not just about, Asian Americans, but all Americans, right now,
Yeah.
people, if you don't think the same, they're attacking each other. If you don't look the same, they're attacking each other.
Yeah.
The people in the North tease the people in the South because of the way they talk.
Mhm. Yeah.
We look at these differences, and it seems like more and more right now, especially, there's division happening for silly things, really silly things that shouldn't be happening. I Now, I'm not making light of the fact that some people are hurt, or actual people get hurt, killed, get damaged
Mhm.
emotionally, physically. I'm not
Yeah,
making light of that.
of course.
But what I'm saying is, let's start working together in enjoying the differences.
Hmm.
I think it's delightful to see the
Hmm.
the difference, color, skin color,
Hmm.
personalities.
Yeah.
And if you want to understand someone, then, like you said, dive into their culture, dive
Hmm.
into their politics, dive into
Yeah.
whatever, and learn about it, even if you don't
Hmm.
agree or it's
Yes,
uncomfortable for you.
of
If
course.
you actually look at it
Mhm.
just objectively,
Mhm.
you can at least understand
Yeah.
why they're acting the way they're acting, or
Hmm.
maybe you can understand how to communicate with that person.
Hmm. Yeah. I think I think if we valued humility a little more, and we all said, hey, you know what, I know some things, but not everything. Um, but if I ask humbly, and I ask, this other person to help me, by sharing their perspective, maybe together we can actually have a better understanding for each other, and for, and then link up with society as a whole, right? Because now when everybody's willing to ask and learn from others, no matter how much we ourselves have accomplished or know, um, I think it just helps kind of grease the wheels of society a little better when we realize, hey, you know what, we're all human. Let's work together.
Yeah. So when
Yeah.
you're working with people, when you're doing your coaching,
Hmm.
what kind of clients come to see you, and how do they find you? In other words, do you have a website or some place where they find you if they want to work with you?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. The easiest way is to visit the website adaptingleaders.com. Got some fun free stuff for you. Got a free download on a framework to handle hard conversations. You can schedule a complimentary 30-minute call. Got a blog on interesting and useful leadership books. So yeah, just check it out. You can also connect with me on LinkedIn. Just look for the conflict resolution coach for Asian American leaders.
Beautiful. Well, thank you. So, a personal question:
Yeah.
what gives you the most happiness and fulfillment in your life at this point?
Oh man. At this point, um, you know, my girlfriend's gonna hate this answer. I mean,
This is an international podcast, so
yeah, I
don't
know,
say
right?
anything
I
you're
know,
going to regret.
I know. No, I mean, if I'm honest, I mean, what gives me the most happiness is salsa dancing, just because the activity itself, I've met so many fun people. The dancing community, the right people are they're fun, they're musical, they're creative. And don't get me wrong, there's snooty dancers, like there's plenty of those too. But salsa dancing, keeps me in shape, makes me feel alive. You have a connection with another person, and it's just a great way to live, really. So yeah, I dance to live. That's what it gives me so much happiness, for sure.
Yeah, and I see that. So that's
Yeah.
awesome. You're just glowing talking about that salsa dancing.
Oh man, yeah.
So yeah, so thank you so much for being on the podcast today and
Mhm,
for, sharing with us your journey.
mhm.
And I have one last question before we finish.
Go for it.
What is your best advice on living an incredible, amazing life?
Hmm. Yeah, and I say this to myself as much as I'd have to say this to anybody else. Um, I think about, I'm going to quote this from Designing Your Life because it's too good. Uh, don't spend your future hoping for a better past.
Mm,
Yeah.
beautiful.
Let's start. Yeah, let's meditate on that a little bit.
I'll take that. Thank
Yeah.
you so much. We'll
Thank you
talk
for
to you
having me.
again soon.
All right. Yep. Until next time.